Some leaves were crushed on the floor as a man scolded a boy named Guinness, calling him a disappointment. The man said he had already accepted that his firstborn Aki was a useless disgrace. He reminded Aki that most nobles were born with powerful skills. Even though Aki was good for nothing, his father had kept him around, hoping to use him later for a political marriage. He shouted that every member of their family had always possessed rare and outstanding abilities. But Aki's skill was nothing special. It was called Plant Eater, an ability that only allowed him to eat any kind of plant. His father said Aki's half-brothers had wonderful skills and blamed Aki's mother for having common blood. His words struck Aki deeply and he tried to respond, but before he could, the wall behind him was suddenly blown apart by an attack. The blast came from his own father, who said that the Guinness family had been given an important duty by the royal capital. This was a crucial time for them to gain a strong position in the central government, and there was no room for someone useless like Aki. He ordered Aki to leave their house. When Aki stepped outside, his half-brothers met him. They said he would be publicly declared dead in an accident. The second son, Jill, said he had always seen Aki as worthless, and now that he knew about his skill, he was sure of it. Trash, he said, would always be trash. The third son, Willem, told him he was no longer part of the family, and that they were even doing him a favor by letting him live as their servant despite his weakness. They added that their father didn't want any stain left on the family's name. Jill laughed at the thought that a skill like Plant Eater even existed. He found it funny that a useless person like Aki had gained such a useless skill, and said Aki might at least have the talent to make others laugh. Willem told Jill not to worry about hurting Aki's feelings since he would die soon anyway. Aki stood quietly holding his small bag. His brothers mocked him for having mana no stronger than that of a commoner. He could only use simple life magic, which meant surviving in the nearby forest full of monsters would be nearly impossible. Still, Jill taunted him, saying that his Plant Eater skill might finally come in handy. He suggested Aki try eating the grass around him. Aki was officially banished. When the heavy gates closed behind him, the guards pushed him away without mercy. The Guinness territory was surrounded by a tall castle wall that marked the edge of their domain. Beyond it stretched a barren wasteland and a thick forest filled with dangerous monsters. Being exiled there was no different from being sentenced to death. Yet Aki felt something else. He felt free. Instead of despair, he looked almost happy. For someone who had just been cast out, he appeared unusually cheerful. He had finally come to another world, but freedom had never been his to enjoy until now. Aki was actually a reincarnated person born into this world as the eldest son of a Viscount. From a young age, he was buried in lessons about manners, studies, and harsh sword training. It was like living under house arrest. They worked him endlessly, afraid others would discover that he had no real talent. Aki had tried his best to serve his family faithfully, but all that effort meant nothing once they learned about his single useless skill. For that reason alone, he was disowned. Still, he no longer had to live under their control or suffer their scorn. He could finally breathe freely for the first time. Somehow he would reach the next town and begin his second life in this new world. A few days later, rain poured down as he walked through the forest. Aki soon realized he had greatly underestimated how hard survival would be. So far, no monsters had found him, which was pure luck. During those days, he had managed to catch only a few small animals. With food running out, his only choice was to eat plants. His skill, Plant Eater, allowed him to consume any kind of plant without harm. It was a small blessing in his current struggle. The only problem was that most plants tasted awful. Even so, each time he ate them, his stamina and mana increased slightly. The effect was weak, but still useful enough not to be called completely worthless. Aki finally understood that his family, who only cared about gaining more power, had always seen him as a burden. They had treated him poorly from the very beginning. Now, far from them, he was ready to start living on his own terms. Aki suddenly heard a strange noise nearby. He wondered if it came from a monster hiding in the forest. Then, a girl with a long ponytail and an oversized hoodie stepped out from the bushes. She was crying, and Aki couldn't understand why someone like her was alone in such a dangerous place. Before he could think further, the girl stumbled, and Aki ran toward her to see if she was all right. As he got closer, the girl whispered that she was hungry. Her sharp teeth showed, and a huge plant monster appeared behind her. She repeated that she was hungry, and the monster's long vines shot toward Aki. Terrified, he ran for his life and quickly realized that the girl might actually be a plant monster herself. He couldn't remember reading about anything like this in his studies. The girl suddenly mocked Aki, calling him a fool. She couldn't believe he had thrown away his weapon and rushed in just because he saw a crying girl. She said a soft-hearted fool like him would die soon anyway and told him to stop struggling and just become her meal. But Aki calmly told her the same thing. He asked who the real fool was, since she didn't even bother to check what kind of skills her prey had before attacking. The girl laughed and said a weak human like him couldn't possibly harm her. She then sent her vines to wrap tightly around Aki's body. Instead of panicking, Aki stayed calm. He said that eating wasn't something a monster like her could do so easily. Then he bit into the vines coiling around him and started chewing. The girl froze, shocked to see him eating her vines. A system message suddenly appeared, confirming that Aki's stats had greatly increased because of his skill. He also gained new skills called Absorption and Swiftness. Aki said he wouldn't let himself be eaten for nothing. Even he was amazed at how powerful he felt. Strength beyond anything he had known was rushing through him, and he wondered what would happen if he ate everything. The girl couldn't believe her prey had turned into a predator. Furious, she tried to strangle him even harder, but Aki grabbed the vines and ripped them apart with ease. He landed on the ground, gripping the remaining vines tightly. His skill activated again, and he gained another ability called Valor thanks to his Absorption skill. The girl stood frozen, completely shocked and confused by what she had just seen. Aki pulled the girl toward him, making her fall face first onto the ground. He walked closer, his presence filled with danger, and told her it was time to eat. Terrified, the girl crawled backward until her back hit a tree. She apologized and tried to reason with him. Aki charged his fist with power and shouted that in the human world, it was common sense never to trust the words of a monster. He swung his fist toward her but stopped when she cried out that she still had a demi-human inside her that she hadn't finished digesting. Aki almost crushed her with his punch, but her words made him pause, saving her life for the moment. He demanded that she release the demi-human and told her to do it quickly. The girl obeyed, feeling sad since it had been her first prey. Her large plant body then spit out a beautiful girl with sharp elf-like ears. Seeing this, Aki realized what kind of being she had eaten. The plant girl confirmed that the demi-human was indeed an elf, and explained that she had trouble digesting her because of the elf's dense mana. Aki then noticed that the girl's huge plant body faded away, and understood that it hadn't been her true form. She angrily warned him not to pry any further, claiming she wouldn't fight anymore. Aki now believed she was a plant monster pretending to be a young girl. The girl shouted that she had a real name, Rin. She proudly declared herself a great spirit and said the giant ugly body was not her true one. Aki commented that he couldn't believe he had actually managed to eat her. Rin complained that it had hurt a lot. Aki explained that his skill, Plant Eater, had activated, which meant Rin was technically a plant. Rin grew embarrassed but insisted she was a great spirit, and that her small form was her real body. Aki ignored her excuses and asked her to help carry the elf girl back to his tent. Just then, the elf girl woke up. She was completely naked, with only Aki's jacket covering her back. Her firm melons were on full display and asked who they were. Meanwhile, Aki's father and brothers were eating together. Willem wondered where Aki might have died, saying the forest was full of monsters. Jill added that Aki probably could not even reach a town with his poor equipment. They thought he was barely surviving by eating weeds or had already become food for monsters. Their father then joined in. He said the dense forest was home to elves. Willem told him not to talk about fairy tales, but their father insisted that elves were real and lived in the forest beside their land. Jill asked what the elves had to do with Aki, but their father said it was not about Aki at all. It was something important for them, his capable sons. He explained that the elves had not shown themselves for over 100 years, but the Guinness family had long been given the duty of forming relations with them. The central government might not expect much from this, but the power and influence the elves held were great. The last human who connected the elves with the kingdom was still remembered as a hero even after 300 years. The reason was that elves possessed magic and artifacts far more advanced than anything humans had. Jill also remembered that elves were known to be incredibly beautiful, while Willem grew excited about the treasures they might have. Their father reminded them that elves were very hard to find, appearing in history only once every few centuries. He told them to focus on becoming strong men who could rule their land well. He himself had not thought much about the elves, but if they ever met them, the Guinness family could become powerful beyond question. It might even be worth exploring the forest again. Back in the forest, Aki checked if the elf girl was alright. He also tried to ask her name, but she seemed lost in thought, which he understood since she had almost been eaten. For now, he suggested they go back to his camp to rest and offered her his hand. The girl reached for it and asked if he truly saved her a second time. Aki was confused by what she meant. The elf girl then said she had been waiting and searching for him for a very long time. Now she could finally fulfill the promise they made 300 years ago. Aki felt confused by what the elf girl said, but for now, he only wanted to make sure she was alright. The girl suddenly remembered that a monster had just attacked her. When she moved, Aki's jacket slipped off her shoulders. Aki quickly told her not to stand. Seeing his reaction, the girl looked down at herself and realized she had been naked the whole time. Her face turned red before she fainted. Aki told her to hold on and called for Rin to help him. Aki let the elf girl rest at his camp. He wished he had some smelling salts to wake her up and searched through his bag for clothes she could wear for now. Rin then noticed that Aki, even though he was just a human, came into the forest with very few supplies. As she made that remark, she also helped herself to his food. Aki told her not to eat them and pointed out that plants could live just by using sunlight. Rin proudly said she was a great spirit and claimed she preferred eating meat. She also reminded Aki that he had gotten in her way earlier and stopped her from catching her first prey. Aki asked why she kept following him even though he had already let her go. Rin said it might be fun to stay with him. Aki didn't understand how she could call it fun when she had almost eaten him. Rin said the same could be said about him since she believed he would not eat her anymore either. Aki then remembered that he gained a huge amount of experience points from that one bite. Rin suddenly grew uneasy and asked if he was still planning to eat her after all. Just then, Aki heard a faint groan behind him. The elf girl slowly woke up and saw Aki and Rin arguing. Aki turned to her and asked if she was feeling better. The elf girl apologized for causing them trouble. Aki said it was fine and mentioned that it was mostly Rin's fault anyway. He then suggested that the girl change her clothes and offered her his spare ones. Before she could accept, Rin suddenly brought out a full set of clothes that appeared out of nowhere. The elf girl gasped when she saw them, realizing they were the same clothes she had worn before getting captured. Rin said she couldn't digest them, so she simply took them out. The elf girl went off to change. Aki then asked if Rin had really pulled the clothes out of her stomach. Rin explained that it was actually her magic storage. Aki was amazed, knowing that magic storage was a high-level spell. Rin felt proud hearing his words and cheerfully reminded him that she was a great spirit after all. Now that they were talking about Rin's magic storage, Aki thought that if it was a spell Rin could use, then he might be able to use it too since she had eaten a part of him. He raised his hand, and a small pocket space appeared out of nowhere. Rin was shocked and began to pout. Aki got excited by how useful the magic was and started putting his belongings inside. Soon after, the elf girl came back wearing her clothes. She apologized for showing such an embarrassing sight earlier and introduced herself as Solace. She thanked them for saving her life. When Aki finally got a better look at her, he realized how beautiful elves were. Rin, on the other hand, was surprised that her first prey turned out to be an elf. Solace was also surprised to learn that Rin was a great spirit and not just a normal monster. She explained that elves and great spirits shared a special bond. Elves borrowed power from great spirits to perform magic, and in return, they protected and cared for them. Aki then realized that Rin had gone too far earlier. Feeling embarrassed by her own mistake, Rin told Solace to become her nourishment if nurturing great spirits was truly the elves' role. Solace calmly replied that even the strongest great spirit would decay before being able to fully digest an elf. Aki remembered that plants could die if they received too much nourishment. This made him realize just how powerful elves really were. Solace added that if things had continued as they did earlier, she would not have escaped unharmed. She thanked Aki once more for saving her. Aki then introduced himself and Rin properly. He told her not to worry too much about being rescued since it happened by chance. Solace smiled and invited Aki to visit their village. When Aki asked if she meant the village of the elves, Solace confirmed it. While traveling together, Aki thought about how he had only read about elves in history books. It amazed him to see they truly existed, and he never expected to be invited to their home. He soon learned that his clan had once saved the elves about 300 years ago. He wondered how Solace even knew he was a descendant. Solace explained that elves never forgot their debts of gratitude. They had been told stories about Aki's ancestors since childhood and even kept their portraits. Rin grew excited at the thought of receiving rewards from the elves, but Aki reminded her she would not get any. He also admitted he could not accept any reward either, since he might only resemble his ancestor. They finally arrived at the elven village. The place looked calm and quiet. The houses were carved into the tall trees, blending with nature. The queen of the elves, Shilla, thanked Aki for saving her daughter's life. Aki nervously replied that it was nothing worth mentioning. He still found it hard to believe that Solace was actually a princess. Shilla seemed worried about owing another debt before they could even fulfill a promise made 300 years ago. She wondered how they could repay everything. Rin looked proud of Aki, but Aki reminded her that it was her fault and told her to at least apologize. Just then, Solace's sister Nieto appeared and asked their mother if the human standing before them was really the one. She questioned if the descendant meant to fulfill the promise could have been someone else. Shilla told Nieto to show proper respect to their guest, whom they were welcoming for the first time in 300 years. Nieto stared at Aki for a moment, gave a short and looked away. After a brief silence, Shilla said it was time to repay Aki for saving her daughter's life and for the ancient covenant passed down through the generations. She lifted her hand and several glowing magic circles appeared around her. Aki recognized it as a high-level storage magic which he expected from an elven queen. In just a few seconds, the entire room filled with gold coins and treasures. Aki and Rin were stunned by the sight. Shilla explained that it was only a humble token of gratitude, but she was offering all of it to him. Shocked, Aki said he could not possibly accept it. Nieto misunderstood and accused him of being greedy. asking if he wanted even more. Solace asked her to calm down and pointed out how rude she had been. Nieto argued that the great spirit who attacked Solace was the same one Aki brought with him, thinking they might have been working together. Solace reminded her that their covenant was absolute, and the fact that Aki and Rin were able to enter the village despite the barrier proved their goodwill. Aki then realized that this was why no one else had been able to find the elven village before. Curious, he asked what the covenant was about. Sheila explained that it was a pact formed between Aki's ancestor and their own, a bond stronger than life itself. Aki was shocked to hear that. Nieto said that while humans might not understand, this was something sacred to them. She explained that the covenant was a magical promise built on the trust of spirits. Sheila raised her hand and fairies appeared in the air. She said that for elves whose roots were tied to the earth, breaking their bond with the spirits who ruled the four elements would bring ruin to their entire clan. Aki understood that breaking the covenant would mean losing their source of power. Nieto was impressed that he figured it out so quickly for a human. Sheila then said it would put them in a difficult position if Aki refused her token of gratitude. Aki replied that he did not do anything special, and that saving Solace was something anyone would have done if they saw someone in danger. Still, he could not help but wonder what exactly had happened 300 years ago. Sheila walked to a nearby window and told Aki to look outside. Just beyond the glass stood a tall tree they called the World Tree. She explained that it was the source of the spirits, which were also the source of life for the elves. But now the tree had started to wither. If it had been left like that, the spirits and all the elves would have died along with it. Thankfully, a magic potion brought by Aki's ancestor had saved the World Tree, and in turn saved the elves as well. Sheila showed Aki a small bottle and said that the amount of potion they had left was almost gone. If it ever ran out, the World Tree might begin to weaken again. Once that happened, the weaker elves would start dying first, and soon after, everyone else would follow. Aki grew quiet. He remembered that in many isekai stories the World Tree was always known to produce mana. The spirits lived through the World Tree, and the elves lived through the spirits. By protecting the World Tree, the elves were also protecting the spirits. Now it seemed they needed this magic potion to keep it alive. Then a thought struck Aki. He pulled out his bag from his magic storage. While the elves watched curiously, he searched through it and took out another bottle of the same potion the elves had shown him. Everyone stared in shock, wondering how he had it. Aki said it was just a coincidence. He didn't tell them that when he had been kicked out of his house he had packed whatever seemed useful. Because his skill was plant eater, he focused on items related to plants. The bottle he brought turned out to be fertilizer. It probably didn't exist 300 years ago, but the idea of fertilizer was very common in his time. He realized the elves hadn't kept up with human progress for centuries. Nieto asked what Aki planned to do with the bottle. Aki handed it to her, saying they needed it more than he did. Nieto blushed and fell silent. Sheila, overcome with joy, hugged Aki tightly, pressing his face into her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she said she couldn't believe that just when they had repaid one debt, another had appeared. She asked what kind of reward would be enough this time and told Aki to request anything he wanted. Nieto nervously warned her mother that Aki might take advantage of her words, while Solace turned red at the thought. Aki asked if the World Tree would really recover with the potion he brought. Sheila confirmed that by strengthening the potion's effect with magic, they had kept the tree alive for the past 300 years. She then repeated her question, asking what he wanted in return. As Solace and Nieto waited shyly for his answer, Aki simply asked if he could eat one of the World Tree's leaves. The elves were stunned and confused by his unexpected request. Meanwhile, Rin had fallen asleep on top of the pile of treasures while the others continued their discussion. Meanwhile, in the Guinness territory, Aki's father was surprised when Lord Javel himself came to visit his home. It was unusual for such a high-ranking man to appear in person. Javel explained that as the Minister of Internal Affairs, it was his duty to oversee matters in the Guinness territory. He said he could not leave such an important area to just anyone. Aki's father grew curious about what he meant by that. Javel went on to say that since there were no major conflicts with neighboring countries, the nobles had turned their focus inward. Domestic matters had become their new battlefield. Aki's father agreed and said that Javel was clearly leading that front, but Javel claimed even his own position was not secure. He explained that peace often gave rise to hidden power struggles among nobles, and that was why the Guinness territory had become one of the most important places in the country. When Aki's father asked what he meant, Javel told him not to pretend ignorance. He reminded him about the rare treasure that could only be found within Guinness, the elves. Hearing this, Aki's father and his children, who had been secretly listening nearby, were stunned. Javel continued, saying that once every few hundred years, the elves revealed themselves to humans. They were a miraculous race that brought great wealth and helped advance magical knowledge. While most people thought elves were only legends, Javel said their existence had been recorded as fact in royal history. He also mentioned that Aki's father, as the local lord, must have been conducting his own investigation about them. Javel then revealed that a strange barrier had recently been discovered nearby. The one who found it was Lady Hina, captain of the royal capital's Second Night Order, who was known for being strict about rules. Javel said he brought not just the news but also a reminder of their long-standing connection. Anything found within the territory belonged to its lord, but he urged Aki's father to consider the bigger picture. Restoring friendly ties with the elves, he said, would greatly benefit the nation. The central government hoped to build relations with them, and the Guinness territory could serve as the bridge. If that happened, Javel assured him that marriage proposals for Aki's sons would pour in. Conveniently, Javel mentioned his own third daughter was now of marriageable age, and he remembered that Aki, the eldest son, was still unmarried. Aki's father was left unsure how to respond. His sons, who had been listening in, quietly stopped after hearing enough. Before leaving, Javel told Aki's father not to rush any decisions but to keep the matter in mind. He promised that the wealth brought by the elves would be enough to raise Aki's father to a high position in the central government with plenty left over to spare. Meanwhile, Willem and Jill were already picturing a rich and easy life if they ever found the elves. Even if their eldest brother died, they thought it would still be worth it as long as they made contact with the elves. They no longer cared about their useless brother and decided to search for the elves first, even if it meant burning down the entire forest. At the same time, Nieto, clearly frustrated, reminded everyone that greedy humans only wanted the world tree. Solace tried to explain that Aki only asked for a single leaf and nothing more. Nieto still refused to accept it since they had no idea what he planned to do with it. Curious, Sheila asked what Aki could possibly do with just one leaf. Aki hesitated to answer because he did not know whether he should reveal his plant-eater skill. It was common sense not to talk openly about personal skills. Then Rin suddenly mentioned that Aki would become stronger if he ate the leaf. She even said Aki had eaten her before. Her strange choice of words made the elves imagine something improper, and they blushed. Rin went on to say that it was her first time being treated that way, and that he had forced himself on her, which caused her great pain. Hearing that, Nieto immediately attacked Aki, who shouted that it was all a misunderstanding. He scolded Rin for how she said things and blamed her for eating Solace in the first place. Rin quickly argued that she did not eat her, only stripped her and chewed her a bit. Those words made Nieto picture even more embarrassing things. She complained that the barrier around their village was useless for allowing such indecent beings to enter. After Aki carefully explained everything, Solace finally understood what his power was and how it worked. Nieto still complained that humans never made sense, but Aki pointed out that it was his skill that was strange from the beginning. Even so, it was that same power that had saved them. Solace agreed and said it was also thanks to Aki's kindness. Nieto looked at him again but still refused to approve of him. In the end, since Aki had given them the magic potion for the world tree, Solace decided to introduce him to their people as their benefactor. Suddenly, the elven children playing outside stopped moving as they noticed something unusual. A loud explosion followed, startling everyone inside the meeting room. Nieto rushed to look outside and her eyes widened in shock. A dark and ominous aura was creeping toward the village. She demanded to know what that terrifying thing was. Aki asked what was going on, but Nieto said she didn't know either. She only felt a strange and nasty aura coming from the forest, spreading all the way into the village. Rin also sensed it and said that something incredible had arrived. Aki was surprised that she could feel it too. Rin looked proud and said it was natural for a great spirit like her. Aki ignored her boast and remembered how he once used the same magic storage that Rin had after eating her vines. He decided to try something similar again. He closed his eyes and focused his mind toward the forest. When he opened them, he could clearly see what was happening deep inside the woods. He exclaimed that he could see it through the spirits. Rin was stunned and asked how he managed to do that. Solace also could not believe that a human like Aki had connected with the spirits. Aki calmly explained that he could use the abilities of the plants he had eaten. Rin was speechless and felt like she had lost her sense of importance. Nieto, on the other hand, realized that Rin truly was a great spirit, and that Aki's plant-eater skill was something beyond imagination. Solace stayed quiet, staring at Aki with disbelief. Nieto then asked what was happening in the forest. Aki focused again and saw small monsters running away from something powerful that had just awakened. A huge bear-like creature appeared, roaring fiercely as it went on a rampage. Nieto asked what he meant by strong, and Aki said it looked like a demonic beast, massive and terrifying. Then he noticed something strange. The enormous creature had been sliced clean in half. At that moment, the elves sensed their protective barrier shatter. They wondered if the beast had caused it, but Aki said it wasn't the beast's doing. Instead, something even more dangerous had appeared. Standing proudly over the slain monster was a female knight who had just defeated it. Aki let out a sigh. The elves wondered if the dangerous thing was what broke the barrier. Aki explained that it was an unintentional aftershock from his sword swing when he defeated the demonic beast. Nieto could not believe that an attack not even aimed at the barrier had damaged it. She asked if someone that powerful had been near the village. Still, assumed that person was good since they had taken down the demonic beast. Aki could not really call them an ally, and judging by their appearance, they were probably a knight. There was only one reason a knight would be in the forest. At that moment, Solace brought out a magic potion and used her magic to spread the liquid. She said they were in a state of emergency and that she was relying on the one with the best chance of success. The fertilizer spread across the world tree, making it look fresh and full of life. Even Rin was amazed. Aki finally understood why the elves were so thankful for what seemed like a simple fertilizer. A leaf then fell from the tree, and Aki realized the fertilizer showed its true power only when mixed with Solace's magic. Solace told him to take the world tree's leaf, along with several rare medicinal herbs and plants that carried sacred power. She apologized for only being able to beg for his help before, but this time she asked him to lend them his strength. Aki felt incredible energy coming from every plant. His strength increased after eating only a few, and he wondered what would happen if he ate them all. A few moments ago, deep in the forest, the female knight struck down the demonic bear with a single swing of her sword. She quietly looked at the pool of blood spreading around the fallen monster. Soon after, another knight came running and called her commander Hina. He asked if she was all right because he had felt an intense presence coming from her direction. When he arrived, he froze in shock at the sight of their subjugation target, a Grizzle lying dead on the ground. The other knights could hardly believe their commander had defeated such a powerful beast alone, and even more, with just one strike. Hina's eyes then shifted toward a distant part of the forest. She told the knight named Marwell that she had another matter to take care of and left the cleanup to him and the others. Marwell tried to ask what was going on, but Hina vanished before he could say another word. At that moment, Hina was silently panicking. She realized she had gone too far and accidentally destroyed a barrier. She wondered what she should do next. Although she had sensed this might happen, she had a vague idea of what the barrier was for. She knew she needed to hurry ahead and explain to those people that she meant no harm. Meanwhile, Aki and Rin sensed that something incredibly strong was moving quickly toward the village. They reported that it was coming at full speed. Nieto nervously asked if it was the same being that had defeated the demonic bear. Aki confirmed it was, though he had no idea what its intentions were. Nieto said there was no time to stay calm and shoved a handful of herbs into Aki's mouth. Aki tried to ask if it was safe to eat them, but the elves said it was too late to question that now. The moment Aki swallowed the herbs, a sudden burst of magical power surrounded him, stunning everyone nearby. The system confirmed that Aki had gained several spirits' divine protections from every element. He had also obtained the stat called Wisdom, and all his other stats had greatly increased because of the Plant Eater skill. The elves could sense that his magic reserves had suddenly grown stronger. Rin felt proud of Aki, but she paused when the system announced that Aki could now form a contract with a great spirit. It turned out that the contract was with Rin herself. She placed her forehead against Aki's, and the system confirmed that a bond had been formed between them. At the same moment, Aki received a new ability called Spirit Cloak. However, he became confused when Rin started turning transparent. In an instant, she vanished and reappeared as a tiny fairy-like being resting on his shoulder. The elves noticed that a strong spiritual aura was now surrounding Aki. Rin thought Aki looked much cooler this time. She playfully tugged his hair, trying to move his body. Aki lost his balance and fell, his fist striking the ground and leaving a huge crater. Rin found it amusing and wanted to try more, but Aki grabbed her and scolded her for treating his body like her own. At that moment, Aki felt he had regained full control, though the power within him continued to surge. He thought that even a spoiled great spirit was still powerful. Rin proudly declared she wasn't spoiled, but super fresh. With his new strength, Aki felt ready to face the coming invader. He sensed that the enemy would arrive any second. Just then, Hina appeared, moving so fast that she couldn't stop herself. She realized too late that her speed had built up too much momentum. Aki appeared in front of her to block the impact, and a massive explosion erupted across the forest. Later, some elven children gathered to talk about what they had seen. They described a woman moving at incredible speed, followed by a loud whoosh and an enormous kaboom. As they looked at the aftermath of Aki and Hina's clash, they couldn't help but feel amazed. Soon after, Hina cried as she apologized. Aki then went over what had happened. He had just learned that Hina was an important member of the royal capital's Knight Order. She came to the forest on a mission, defeated her target, but got carried away and ended up breaking the elves' barrier. Nieto angrily asked how out of control Hina had been. Solace explained that the trees were burned and knocked down just from Hina running, but Aki managed to stop her before things got worse. Nieto argued that the village was already damaged since there was a huge crater. Solace reminded her that no one got hurt because of Aki, who even saved Nieto from the aftershock. Nieto blushed and glanced at Aki. Solace said it was lucky Aki came to their village and told her sister they should thank him later. Nieto quietly agreed. Hina apologized again, saying she often lost focus in battle. She admitted she was surprised that the eldest son of the Guinness family had that much strength. She thought there were only a few people in the entire royal capital who could have stopped her in that state. It was a miracle no elves or villagers were harmed. She was grateful Aki was there and admitted she was clumsy or maybe just rough. Aki realized how dangerous Hina actually was, but she did not seem like a bad person. He thought having a powerful ally connected to the central government was useful. Nito remembered that the central government was where the human king lived and wondered why they needed more allies. Aki said it was better to have more strong allies, since people in the world had different beliefs, just like the elves who built the barrier. Solace agreed. She said the world tree had recovered and their strength had grown, but it was true that humans like Aki and Hina had great power as well. Nieto pointed out that Aki seemed more dangerous since he could eat spirits. Aki quickly said that was a misunderstanding. Solace then said that just as there was once a covenant with Aki's ancestor, it might now be time for them to start an age of cooperation with humans. She believed that, like Aki, there were humans with power who did not misuse it. Nieto muttered that she might agree only if the other humans were as soft-hearted as Aki. Hina said this was exactly what the royal capital had hoped for. She explained she had entered the forest pretending it was to defeat the demonic bear, but her real mission had been to investigate the area. She added that in any era, forming a connection with the elves had always been a dream of humanity. Rin then appeared wearing a flower crown, saying a child from the village had given it to her as a tribute. Aki was about to scold Rin for disappearing, but before she could say anything, Hina suddenly moved. Instead of attacking, she stared in amazement at how cute Rin looked. She asked if Rin was a flower fairy because she had expected fairies to have light green hair and big magical-looking eyes. Rin said she was not a fairy but a spirit. On top of that, a great spirit. She jumped in frustration, and the sight made Hina's heart skip for a moment because of how cute it was. With her hands clasped, Hina said that great spirits were symbols of life and mystery, living alongside elves as sources of energy, and also fluffy, cute, sparkly, and floating. Rin asked what was wrong with her and said she was not floaty, only someone who carried the power of a spirit. Hina began crying tears of joy and Rin started to feel uneasy. Aki and Nito glared at Hina, which made her regain control of herself. She then suggested they focus on discussing their next steps. Aki said it was too late for her to try to act calm again. Hina dropped to the ground in embarrassment. Aki thought the situation was troublesome and said that ever since she was young, her ability to think clearly had stopped working whenever she saw something cute. Nieto could not believe a human like her had so many issues. Hina replied that it was better to be a little scatterbrained than a stiff knight who never relaxed. Aki then guessed Hina might be a military weapon humans planned to use against the elves, but Hina said she was different. She explained that even though she was a knight loyal to her lord, she was also a shield and sword for those without power. She could not accept cruel actions against others. And besides, she said Aki was with them, so the hardliners back in the kingdom would not dare act against the Guinness family, the only family with deep ties to the elves. As Hina spoke, Aki suddenly remembered something important. She said she had been expelled from the Guinness family and was now just a commoner. Hina froze, unable to believe what she had just heard. Aki had been kicked out of his house and Rin laughed at him for it, but he quickly punished her. Nieto found it hard to believe that Aki was someone with no home or address. Aki said that was why he had been camping in a forest filled with monsters, and right after that Rin attacked him. Even though Aki was a noble, Solace felt sorry that he went through such misfortune. Still, Aki said it worked out in the end because he was able to save her. Solace blushed and thanked him. Rin then told them to calm down and said that none of this would have happened if Aki had not been kicked out in the first place. Solace added that both of them might have died if Aki had not found them. Rin then admitted it was actually a good thing he was kicked out. Hina could only sigh. Aki apologized, saying that they could no longer expect anything from the House of Guinness. Hina said it was fine because it was not the House of Guinness the central government cared about. What mattered more were the number of powerful factions behind them. Starting with the Minister of Internal Affairs, Count Givell, some people were using their connections to the House of Guinness to grow their own influence by getting close to the elves. Opposing them were other factions that took a strict stance against elves, dwarves, and other demi-humans, trying to control them completely. Aki realized the situation sounded serious. Hina said it was not all bad because she had learned a lot about his character. She saw that he had been accepted by the elves and, more importantly, he had enough power to form a covenant with a great spirit. If people thought of it as the role of connecting the kingdom and the elves moving from the House of Guinness to Aki himself, then the path forward became clear. Nieto asked what she meant. Hina explained that the kingdom's political struggles could be split into two sides. One side was made of extremists who wanted to control demi-humans. The other side was made of moderates who wanted a cooperative relationship. But in truth, the extremists were easier to deal with. Solace asked if she meant they had to fight them, but there were many of them in the capital. Hina reminded her that she was the commander of the Night Order because she was the strongest in the kingdom. If those people wanted to fight Aki, who was equal to her in power, then the two of them just needed to work together to crush their enemies. Getting her seal of approval meant their strength was superior, but Aki believed the real problem was how to deal with the moderates. He knew simply saying he would become the bridge between humans and elves would not be enough. Hina said they might be called moderates, but in truth, they were a foolish group only trying to secure that role for themselves. Those who wanted to connect with the elves would likely try to get close to Aki from now on. Feeling disgusted, Nieto asked why people wanted to be involved with them so badly. Hina explained that to normal humans, elves were like a fantasy and a symbol of deep longing. If someone formed ties with the elves, they could gain great wealth, unknown technologies, and even beautiful partners. All their desires could come true. Aki realized the situation had become a serious problem. From this point on, Hina said it would turn into a battle of wits. Powerful people, royals and nobles would approach Aki with hidden motives. She reminded him to judge carefully who could be trusted. Nieto doubted he could do that. Aki said he was not that naive and claimed he was someone who would help anyone in trouble he met on the road. Nieto could not believe he was ignoring their warnings and said someone this soft would be taken advantage of. Rin called Aki a fool. Solace, who had stayed silent until then, finally spoke and called to Aki and Hina. She said it was a great blessing that the two of them had rare powers. But more importantly, they were good people. She said they should be thankful that the number of humans worthy of being welcomed had grown. Hina was touched and suddenly knelt before the elf queen. She swore she would take full responsibility for putting the elves who lived with noble spirits and mysteries in danger. She made this promise with the honor of a knight. Everyone looked relieved. Just as Hina decided to return to the royal capital to prepare countermeasures, she felt something was wrong. Aki and Rin felt it too. Aki finally understood how it felt when someone with clear hostility approached the barrier. Rin said the intruders seemed weaker though. Nieto asked what they meant. At that moment, an elf rushed into the meeting room and reported that humans were heading toward their village. Jill was leading an army. Aki apologized and said this was his personal conflict between brothers. He promised he would end it quickly. Meanwhile, the elves warned everyone that humans were approaching. Jill confidently led his forces into the forest. He had thought the whole story about the elves was a sham, but judging by his father's careful attitude, they must really live in the forest. A soldier asked Jill to at least wait for the family to give orders, but Jill glared and told everyone he would be the next head of the family, so they should follow his lead and find the elves. He already believed the elves were in the woods, though he wondered why his father acted so cautiously. He decided to hurry and take the credit himself. The other soldiers still doubted the elves existed. They knew a secret search was happening and that making contact with the elves would be important, but they could not understand why Jill suddenly led the team. Seeing how many men he had brought, they thought he planned to overpower the elves by force. They worried they might not win since legends said the elves had huge mana. Still, they had come this far and felt it was too late to stop Jill. Then some soldiers reported seeing figures they believed were elves. Jill felt sure he would get the credit alone. Even high officials in the capital wanted a tie to the elves. Now that one obstacle was gone, Jill thought he could bring the elves and the household under his control. He pressed the soldiers for details about the sightings and tried to learn whether the rumors about elf beauty were true. The soldiers said the elves avoided being seen, so they only confirmed their presence from a distance and could not describe them clearly. Jill called them useless and said elves did not care about lifespan, so they might look the same at any age. Since he had found them first, he felt no one would complain if he claimed a reward. He decided selfishly to take 2 or 3 elves for himself and treat them as his trophies. Someone suddenly spoke up and said that everything happening was not right at all. Aki appeared and said Jill had not changed at all. Jill was shocked to see him alive. The soldiers were also stunned because they had heard that the eldest young master had died in a forest accident. Jill angrily asked why someone useless like Aki was even there. Rin then came out from behind and asked Aki who was making all the noise. Aki said Jill was his brother. Rin calmly said Jill looked much weaker than Aki. Jill could not believe he was being told he was weaker than someone he always looked down on. He then mocked Aki and asked what a useless exile like him was doing in the forest. He guessed Aki had become arrogant and tried to find the elves on his own. But Jill froze when he noticed the elves standing behind Aki. Aki told the elf girls to stay hidden behind him. Solace refused and said it was their village's problem too and that she would help. Jill could not accept that someone slow, useless, and banished from his own home dared to stand ahead of him. He called Aki lucky but said he would never be welcome back home and declared the elves as his own. He shouted that the family house and the elves belonged to him and told Aki to spend the rest of his life crawling on the ground. Aki stayed calm and said Jill's way would never work. He told him that if he wanted the elves' strength, he needed to respect them. Jill told him to shut up and said he had no right to lecture him. He said Aki was still as annoying as ever and had forgotten his place. Jill claimed this was the perfect chance to show his power and use Aki as an example to gain an advantage in his talks with the elves. He said Aki should have been dead anyway and ordered his soldiers to kill him. The soldiers hesitated because Aki was still the eldest young master, their rightful leader. When they suggested reporting to the family head, Jill cut some of them down without a second thought. He could not believe they still did not know their place. He shouted at them to stay silent and obey him. The soldiers, with no other choice, attacked Aki. Nieto asked worriedly if they would be fine. Hina drew her sword and said their opponents were no threat to her or Aki. She swiftly cut down the soldiers with ease. The only concern she had was whether she could still hold back. Aki asked her not to injure them too badly. At the same time, Solace healed the injured soldiers. She said her power was small, but when it came to healing, she could help. Nieto asked why her sister was helping a human. Solace reminded her that a human had saved her too. Seeing Jill now standing alone, Aki said there was nothing to worry about anymore. He said it was fine to only hold back a little. Jill stepped back in fear and confusion, unsure of what was happening. Aki and Hina stood in front of him, surrounded by Jill's unconscious soldiers. Soon after, Jill and his men were tied up and taken to the elf village. He warned them about the consequences and declared that he was the heir of the Guinness household, not an outcast like Aki. He shouted that a worthless nobody would not get away after treating him like this. Nieto could not believe what she saw. Even after being captured, Jill still acted proud, and she started to doubt whether he was truly Aki's brother. Aki explained they did not share the same mother. Rin found it amusing that Jill could not even touch Aki after calling him a nobody. Earlier, Aki had asked Jill if he still wanted to continue and told him to give up. Aki only dodged Jill's attacks with no effort. He found it troublesome to avoid hurting his brother. Jill angrily told them not to get full of themselves just because they got lucky. Rin found him irritating and thought about roughing him up more. Even though there was a huge difference in strength, Aki did not feel like hurting Jill. In the past, when he lived at home, he could not beat Jill in swordsmanship, and would always end up being beaten badly. But now, even without using Rin's spirit cloak skill, Jill's movements looked slow to Aki's eyes. He had eaten many things besides the world tree's leaf, and the plants in the elf village were truly special. He wondered what would happen if he kept eating plants like those. Nieto asked what they should do with Aki's brother. She saw he was not sorry at all and suggested throwing him to the monsters as feed. Aki scratched his head and said there were still a few ways to deal with the situation, but he could not let Jill go home without making him understand the danger. He warned Jill that entering elf territory like this also put his own life and his household at risk. Jill did not believe someone like Aki could do anything serious. He said he would become the next family head and a great noble. He claimed even the Knight Order from the royal capital would not stay quiet if Aki tried to arrest him. He argued that Aki only defeated him because he let his guard down. He mocked Aki, calling him a weak failure, and said that useless shut-ins could never win against the elite knights. He even said they could burn the whole forest if they wanted. Nieto asked if humans truly started wars in such reckless ways. Aki replied that the kingdom would not act over something this small. Jill said someone like Aki would never understand. He claimed this could be twisted into a story about the heir of a nearby lord being unfairly captured. He said the truth could be changed depending on who told the story, just like how Aki's exile had turned into a rumor about him dying helplessly in the forest. Aki wondered if Jill was really talking about changing stories based on who spread them. Jill reminded him he was the rightful heir of the Guinness family and said his words were like the law. He claimed no one would trust a failure like Aki or a group of elves who hid from the world. Hina finally spoke and said that in that case, she would handle it. She saw that Jill's judgment had been clouded, and it was shocking that they exiled Aki and chose someone like him as the heir instead. Jill angrily asked who she thought she was to speak to him like that. Hina pointed her sword at his face, told him to be quiet, and said he should not disgrace humanity any more than he already had. With a shaking voice, Jill reminded them that he was the son of a great noble who protected the frontier of an important nation, and that no one there was more important than him, the heir. Hina made it clear he was wrong. She said he was no noble in this situation. She explained that the worth of a human who had not yet been confirmed as the next lord was not as high as he believed, since it was a position that could easily be taken away. Jill shouted that she should not compare him to the weak Aki. He claimed he was the next lord of the Guinness household and was born different from trash like them. He said it was their duty to follow his orders. Hina then asked him a simple question. She wondered whose words the king would believe more, hers as the commander of the royal capital's first knight order, or his as a mere so-called heir. Jill froze in shock. Hina could not believe Jill failed to recognize her because he was too busy shouting. She said that his terrible act against their allies, the elves, had already become something she must report, both as a knight and as a citizen of the kingdom. Jill stood speechless. Hina then turned to the elves and knelt. She gave a formal apology to the elven queen as a citizen of the royal capital. She promised to take full responsibility for what happened and asked for a proper meeting at another time. Jill could only stand there in silence, stunned by the truth. Soon after, Rin repeated Hina's words about taking responsibility and turned them against her. She said Hina might have acted confident earlier, but she was the one who broke the barrier in the first place. Hina, still kneeling, felt guilty. Aki pointed out that repairing the barrier was an even harder task. Nito complained that standing guard to stop monsters from entering the village was a hassle. Solace asked everyone to calm down. She knew Hina had done her best to protect them without letting anyone get hurt, and she was grateful for her honesty. Hina felt moved and allowed herself to be comforted by the elven queen. After that, Aki said they needed to discuss things both with his family and the kingdom. Solace agreed and said the elves also needed a meeting with the kingdom. However, Aki suggested fixing the barrier first since he thought his father might already be searching for the elven village. Solace offered to use her own mana to support the barrier for a while. Saras reminded them that the world tree had already regained its strength. She said her mother, as one of the village elders, was connected to the world tree through her mana. Aki focused and could clearly feel the power of the world tree flowing from Solace. He wondered if eating a leaf from the world tree made him feel slightly connected to it too. Nieto told him to stop staring at her beautiful mother and called him a pervert. Aki said that was not his intention. Solace laughed at her jealous daughter, but Nieto told her not to misunderstand. Solace then explained that she could not leave the village while maintaining the barrier. Because of that, she planned to send her daughters Saras and Nieto as her representatives to the kingdom. The sisters were shocked. Hina worried if that was really alright and suggested sending someone from the kingdom instead. Solace said she would restore the barrier soon, but anyone who tried to cause harm would be forced to wander the forest forever. She said a single envoy might make it through, but a larger group would not reach the village. Hina was surprised a barrier so powerful even existed. Aki said the forest was already confusing and even he might have trouble finding the village once the barrier was fully active. Solace asked what he meant and gently pulled his head to rest on her chest. She said the world tree would now guide him since he was already like family to the elves. Nieto quickly pushed Aki away and angrily asked what he was trying to do to her mother. Aki tried to explain that he was the one who got hugged without warning. Nieto ignored him and said he could only return to the village if he was with her. Solace giggled, and Saras asked her to stop. Saras then asked if Nieto was really fine with going to a human kingdom since she once swore never to leave the village. Nieto said they had no choice, and she was more worried about Saras. She feared Saras might get eaten by a spirit again. Rin quietly promised not to eat her again. Aki guessed that he, Saras, and Nieto would go together. He wondered if Hina would join them. Hina said she would go separately because she needed to escort Jill and his men to the royal capital first. She said her squad should be nearby and she would meet them soon. She asked them to let her stay there until they arrived, even if it seemed a little embarrassing. Aki wondered if her squad could even find the village since the path to it was nearly impossible to locate. Hina told him not to worry because her vice commander Marwell was always good at searching the area for her whereabouts. At that moment, Marwell called out to Hina and said they had been searching for her. Nieto asked how he even managed to get inside. Hina said that was simply the kind of person Marwell was. Nieto then noticed the demonic bear lying dead on the cart. Aki thought it must have been the monster Hina had defeated. Nieto said it was around the time that the monster known as the Scourge of the Forest was supposed to awaken, but she never expected a human to defeat it with a single strike, and even break the barrier with just the aftershock. As an apology, Hina wanted to offer the demonic creature's remains to the elves who lived by hunting. However, she still needed to submit the monster to the kingdom as proof that she had defeated it. So she offered the other monsters she had killed along the way instead. She asked the elves to make use of them for the village. Nieto was left speechless. This clumsy knight turned out to be a real menace. Outside, Marwell looked around with amazement. He could not believe he was standing in a real elven village. He asked his commander for permission to spend a little time learning from the villagers. Hina then ordered her group to return to the royal capital right away. Before leaving, she handed Aki a document and told him to show it to the guards when he reached the capital so he could contact her. She told him to read it carefully because the second page listed the names of nobles in the area whom they could trust. Aki gave his thanks. After the captured enemies were loaded into the carts, Hina and her soldiers left the village. As he watched them leave, Aki finally understood that Hina truly was the commander of the Night Order, and Saras believed that was Hina's real nature. Rin felt relieved that they were gone. Aki thought Rin had grown used to Hina by the end, even though Rin remembered how Hina sometimes looked at her in a strange way. Rin knew she could not lower her guard. Aki wished Hina had stayed to keep Rin under control, but it was already time for them to move as well. He wondered if it was really fine to travel to the royal capital on foot. The elven sisters did not know what to do either because they lived as wanderers. Aki admitted he rarely left his own land, so he was also clueless about the world outside. Saras reminded him about the second page in Hina's document and thought it might help them. Aki opened the letter and looked through the list of trusted nobles they could visit. To his surprise, he spotted a familiar name, Count Luis. The girls wanted to know if Aki knew him. Aki said he did in a way, but he found it strange to see Luis included on the list. Saras asked what he meant, and Aki remembered seeing Luis at noble gatherings before. Luis acted like a proud and selfish noble who loved power more than anything. Rin thought that made him untrustworthy. Aki did not fully agree or deny it, but after looking closer he noticed the letter was not addressed to Count Luis. It was addressed to Felina. Nieto asked if Felina was Luis's wife or daughter. Aki said she was his daughter. He had never spoken to her directly, but had seen her at events standing beside her father. He did not have a strong positive impression of her either. Saras assumed the daughter was the same as the father. However, Nieto pointed out that Felina's name was actually at the top of the list of recommendations. Aki then remembered that Felina acted more like a proper noble compared to her father. That was probably why her father's behavior felt even worse. Aki could not imagine Hina lying about this. With his current strength, he believed he could handle whatever might happen. For now, he thought they had no other choice but to start their journey. At the same time, a noble lady became angry and slammed a stack of papers on the table. She complained that it was nothing more than a summary of an old book. Her butler explained that it was the most recent information they could gather. Felina asked in a cold voice if he was making excuses and ordered him to redo it. The butler hesitated as if he wanted to ask something. Felina asked what it was. He quietly asked what she planned to do with all the information she was collecting about demi-humans. Felina glared at him without saying a word. The butler quickly left and promised to begin the preparations right away. Felina let out a tired sigh and sat on her couch. She thought it was still not enough. She felt she did not have enough of anything, whether it was political power, money, or personal strength. So she believed the least she could do was gather information. If she did not do that, she would not be able to protect anything important to her. Meanwhile, Aki stared in amazement while riding a carriage that Rin was driving. The elven sisters sat quietly at the back as the carriage moved along the road. Aki felt surprised and filled with awe when he saw the trees quietly moving aside. He thought it was because of Solace and Nieto's powers. He found the elves amazing. Solace felt glad they could help, but Nieto worried if they were really going the right way. Aki only had a rough idea of the path, yet Count Luis's land was not too far, and his mansion was supposed to be large, so it seemed impossible to miss. Even if they got lost, they had plenty of supplies that Hina had shared with them. The horses also followed Rin very well for some unknown reason. Solace said they could talk to all things through spirits and believed Aki could feel it too if he focused. Aki then understood that was why the trees moved aside for them. He found this world even more amazing. Nieto asked if it was alright to ignore Aki's problems with his family, especially with his dangerous brother. Aki knew things were probably chaotic back home, but he could already imagine what was happening. Jill was most likely acting on his own, and since Hina went straight to the royal capital, Aki thought it would take longer for his family to learn the truth. His father and other brother were both sensible, which made him uneasy, but their fighting skills were not like Jill's. It would be worse to face them now and give them only part of the information. Letting Jill act freely for now would make him take responsibility later. Rin believed Jill would do something foolish again because he was Aki's brother. Aki then mentioned offering Rin as a hug pillow for Hina the next time they met. Rin panicked and ran to Solace saying Aki was treating her unfairly. Nieto worried and asked if they would really be safe. She said elves did not live in hiding for no random reason, and they clearly knew how unreasonable humans could be. Aki noticed how tense she was and gently patted her head to calm her. Nieto's cheeks turned red. Aki said there was no one in his family who could break through Solace's barrier, and they had strengthened it with his and Rin's spirit magic before leaving the village. He also said someone as powerful as Hina was on the elves' side. He reminded her that he had grown much stronger after eating the leaf of the world tree. They would also notice right away if anything happened to the barrier. Rin agreed, saying her minions were watching carefully. Nieto had no way to argue with that. She said even a fallen great spirit was still a great spirit. Rin responded that she had not fallen but still fine. Nieto said it was only a figure of speech. After that, Aki reminded everyone that they were heading to the fief of Count Luis for the time being. Nieto complained that he should not end the topic like that and should focus on stopping his great spirit instead. Meanwhile, in the Luis estate, the Count went through several documents. A report had arrived saying that a group of thieves had taken over the goblin nest that had been cleared outside the fief's borders. A servant explained that many adventurers and merchants traveling through that place had become victims one after another. The Count sighed because he knew it was a serious issue. He then asked about his daughter. The servant said the young lady had locked herself in her study to research something, and they believed it was about demi-humans, especially elves. The Count remembered that forming a connection with the elves was a long-time wish of their kingdom. The Night Order had already been sent out, so it was likely that different demi-humans would be found sooner or later. He asked the servant what he thought about demi-humans. The servant answered that he would like to speak with them if he ever had the chance. Elves especially were like the beings from old stories he had heard when he was a child. The Count agreed that it was fine for ordinary people to think that way. However, those who ruled could not be so simple. They had to think carefully about the many problems that could appear between different races. He wondered if his daughter truly understood this. After thinking for a moment, he told the servant to send a copy of his documents to Felina. He chose to leave the whole matter in her hands. If she could bring peace to the land, then he, as the head of House Luis, would support her goals. But if she failed, he ordered that she must be told the family leadership would pass to her younger brother, Milt. Aki said it was the perfect day for a walk, and Solace agreed. Hina wished their ride had not been completely ruined. About an hour earlier, Rin had pulled the horses to a stop while they traveled through the forest. She was excited. Aki had warned her that even if they avoided the trees, they could still hit a rock. Rin said it would be fine because she was watching the road. But then the cart hit a rock and crashed. Nieto asked in frustration what they were supposed to do now. Rin felt guilty. Even so, Nieto was relieved that no one was hurt. Aki said he could use his storage magic to pack away their things. They would reach Count Luis's land soon anyway. Nieto complained that Aki spoiled Rin too much just because she was his spirit companion. Aki explained that Rin was more like a trained wild creature. Then they heard someone screaming for help. A man wearing armor stumbled out of the bushes. He said something terrible had happened and begged for help. Aki noticed the family crest on his armor. He told the man to stay calm and asked what had happened. The man said that their young lady, Felina, had been taken by bandits. At the same time, inside a cave, a group of rough bandits laughed. They could not believe they had captured a count's daughter so easily. They thought Felina would sell for a high price. Their leader had ordered them not to harm her or damage anything she wore. Still, they felt it was a waste to have such a valuable prize sitting in front of them without using it. Aki remembered that the crest on the armor belonged to the private soldiers of House Luis. He wondered why a noble lady had been captured by bandits. The soldier said the young lady had been sent to deal with a bandit group. Their hideout was just an old goblin nest, and one of their men had been careless and was caught. The young lady decided to take his place, and before anyone could stop her, the bandits captured her. Solace asked if Felina, the young lady mentioned, was the one they were supposed to meet, and Aki confirmed it. Nieto then thought about whether they could trust the human soldier in front of them. The soldier tried to argue, but he was shocked when he realized the two girls were real elves. Rin introduced herself as the most amazing among them, a great spirit. The soldier was stunned, and just as he started to question who they really were, he noticed that Aki was the heir of House Guinness. Aki explained that he was now only the former heir. He then focused on more important matters and asked the soldier for every detail about the situation, such as the number of bandits and the location of their hideout. The soldier said the bandit base was close by and there were at least 30 of them. Their mission had only been meant to check the area, so they had brought few soldiers. However, they were suddenly surrounded in the forest. The young lady was very beautiful, and he feared the bandits were doing something terrible to her at that moment. He cried out in panic and blamed himself for putting her in danger. Solace could see that something serious had happened, and it truly caused worry. Aki explained that Felina was the daughter of a count, so even if the bandits asked for money or tried to sell her to slavers, they would not harm her easily. Even so, Nieto still felt concerned about the young lady. Aki then asked what the other soldiers were doing. The soldier said they had gone straight back to the manor to report the attack and ask for more help. He was ordered to search the area for any trustworthy adventurers. Aki said he had planned to meet Felina anyway, so he told the soldier to lead him there. The soldier felt relieved that Aki was coming, but he hesitated and asked about Aki's guards. Since Aki was the heir of House Guinness, the soldier thought he would have protection with him. Aki reminded him that he was the former heir now, but he still believed he was stronger than the soldiers of the Guinness family. Even so, the fact that Felina offered herself as a hostage troubled him. Hina had spoken about Felina before, and he could not believe she allowed herself to get captured without a reason. Inside the bandits' cave, some of the men were already knocked unconscious on the ground. Felina knew it had been a risky move, but she was glad the bandits were enemies she could handle alone. More unconscious bandits lay behind her. She had hidden a sword under her dress and used it at the right time. She had also figured out which merchant was secretly working with the bandits and controlling them. Now it was only a matter of time. She wondered whether the bandits' reinforcements would arrive first or the rescue group from the fief. It became another gamble she chose to face and waited to see how it would end. In the quiet woods, Rin sniffed the air and pointed toward the path they were taking. Aki wondered why she was the one leading, but the soldier said it was the correct direction. Rin proudly talked about her powers as a great spirit, while Aki casually compared her to a dog. The soldier was surprised by how relaxed they all seemed. After all, Aki was once a lord, and now he traveled with elves and even a great spirit in his group. They soon arrived at the entrance of the bandits' hideout. The area felt strangely silent, and it did not look like many bandits were around. The soldier said there should have been at least 50 of them, so he expected at least 10 guarding the place. Aki thought they might all be gathered deeper inside. He told the elven sisters to hide their ears just in case. Right after warning everyone to stay cautious because the bandits had a hostage, Rin calmly walked into the cave. She found it hard to believe that humans lived in caves like wild animals. As she stepped inside, she mentioned to Aki, who followed behind her, that there were people lying unconscious on the ground. The soldier anxiously asked if the person was the young lady, but Aki said it was an old man, and even more, there were many bodies scattered around. The girls guessed they were the bandits, and wondered what could have happened. Suddenly, Felina appeared and said she had won her gamble. She said she would have been fine on her own. The group then realized that Felina had allowed herself to be captured on purpose, gathered information, and then defeated 10 bandits by herself. Aki said she was crazy. Nieto pointed out that Aki, of all people, was the last person who should be calling someone crazy. The soldier asked how Felina managed it when she was known to be bad at sword fighting. Felina admitted she was not skilled and had never even won a practice match. The soldier then asked how she defeated the bandits. Aki guessed that her practice opponent must have been Hina. Shocked, the soldier asked if he meant the commander of the Second Night Order. Felina confirmed she was childhood friends with Hina and had learned a few things from her. She said she could handle a few rough men, but she would not stand a chance against someone truly skilled. Aki realized her view of strength was unusual. Felina Luis was someone who was supposed to be respected for her sharp mind and natural talent as well. Felina mainly wondered why the eldest son of House Guinness was in her family's territory. Aki seemed surprised that she recognized him. Felina remembered that their lands were next to each other, so she had memorized the list of nobles. Still, she found it strange that the next lord of House Guinness was walking around with only a few attendants. When her eyes shifted to the two sisters, she felt something different. From the flow of mana coming from them, she asked if they were elves. Rin then said she was a great spirit and questioned Felina about her own mana sensing. Felina could not believe she was looking at real elves. She thought that House Guinness must have built a strong relationship with the elves. Aki said it was not exactly House Guinness. He admitted that he had been exiled from his family. Nieto added that House Guinness was more like their enemy now. Felina asked what they meant, and Aki explained what happened. After he was exiled and wandered through the forest, he was attacked by a monster who called herself a great spirit named Rin. After he defeated her, an elf named Solace came out from inside the monster. Solace asked him not to mention such an embarrassing story again. As thanks for helping the elf village, Solace and Nieto agreed to go with him to the royal capital. Nieto reminded him not to talk as if they were his belongings. Felina asked for a moment to understand everything. She realized that it was not House Guinness but Aki himself who had formed a bond with the elves, and now he acted as their representative. Aki turned to the sisters and asked if that was true. Nieto said that from her point of view, she could not tell which humans were friends or enemies except for him. Aki then said there was also Hina. He mentioned that Hina had told him to come to Luis' territory to meet Felina, who would become his greatest ally. Felina's expression softened when she heard that Aki had met Hina. She wanted to hear more, but Aki said they had something important to handle first. He called Rin over. A nearby soldier asked what was happening. Felina stated that they were surrounded. Bandits stepped out of the trees. Their leader said he heard his men had captured a woman worth a high price, and now, seeing 2 more women, he thought he could earn even more. He also said they seemed too energetic for his liking and decided they needed to be taught a lesson before being sold.